Hello, everyone. I just wanted to do a brief video, um, which is supposed to be an overview of the second part of the course. Second part of the course, I believe I've called the meaning of mortality, and that is what uh, connects these two readings I'm giving you from Hans Jonas and Glenn Gray. But just thought I would just say that that really is what I have in mind. That the first part of the course, which is really dominated by Epicurus, is about death. And as you know by now, a very specific, rigorous, you might say, theory of death, theory of what death is, and the implications of that. But really, it is, on the part of Epicurus, an attempt to say what death is. Um, I don't think that these next two readings by Jonas and Gray can be accurately described in the same way. We really are shifting our subject matter, and that is from death itself to mortality. That I don't know what to say. Is that an obvious distinction? I guess it is, but it wasn't obvious to me. I suppose when I was doing my reading, getting this course together, but it's a very important distinction. Um, One of the things, and I'll tell you why. Obvious or not, it's an important distinction, and I'll tell you why I think so. It is difficult to talk about death, and I don't mean emotionally or psychologically difficult. I mean philosophically difficult, especially if we are talking about the Epicurean view of death. Because death, Epicurus says, is nothing to us. It's nothing that we'll ever experience. It's hard even to say what it is, beyond being the end of life. And talking about ends or limits is difficult, especially if there are things which, if Epicurus is right, we'd never experience. If Epicurus is right, we never experience death, but we certainly experience mortality. And so, in talking about mortality, we are, again, changing our subject. It's obviously a directly related subject to death, but it is a different thing. And in many ways, it opens up the conversation quite a bit because it's difficult to talk about death if we're Epicureans because we never experience it. But again, we do experience mortality. And just to explain that, mortality is not death. Mortality is the that's how I would define it. The condition of being the kind of thing that can and will die. You and I are experiencing that right now. So, however problematic it may be to talk about the experience of death, it is not problematic in the same way to talk about the experience of mortality because we are we're used to it. That is, we're not talking about the experience of death itself. We're talking about the experience of being aware of being the kind of creature that will die. And there I've um, added something to it, and that is we are we share the condition of being mortal with all other creatures, all other organic life. On the other hand, we would seem to be either the only creature or one of the very few that is part of our consciousness once we reach a certain age, of course, of being a person, of being alive. And once we reach the age where we are truly conscious of ourselves, it also happens that we become aware of being mortal. That is, we become aware of the fact that we will die. And that's a very important moment in a human being's life, human being's young life. And it's something which is a rich conversation we can have about that childhood realization of the unavoidableness of death, not only one's own death, but the deaths of all the people around one. Very important. So I just wanted to emphasize that is a conceptual thing that you kind of have to have under your belt. That in going into the second part of the course, we are changing our focus quite a bit from death to mortality, and you should have a grasp of what that means. Again, I don't know if it's obvious or not. I think I'm beyond the point. I've read this stuff so much and thought about it so much that I've lost touch about what's obvious and what's not. So oftentimes I probably will say things that are obvious. But if we look at, well, first looking at Jonas's burden and blessing of mortality, you can see how things do open up in the sense that um, he is talking about humanity here. He's talking about how much the awareness of our deaths has shaped us and shaped human culture and how important it is. And then in Gray's essay, he has this wonderful passage uh, here on page 114 where he asks a series of questions. What meaning and significance can be attached to the fact that man must die? How should I regard my own death as a future event? What values are to be derived from regarding it at all, as contrasted with forgetting about it and living as though death were not real? These are a bunch of really interesting, very compelling questions that are not technical things about conceiving of death rightly, but very expansive questions about life. What does it mean to live life knowing that you are temporal and finite? What is it like to live life knowing that you can die at any moment and that eventually you will die no matter what? How does that structure our existence? So, yeah, I think this is a really interesting and appropriate subject to look into. And I just wanted to give you some notion of what I had in mind in choosing the readings.